Hey, vinyl community, Jeff here for another contest entry for another one of our great VC members. This is a contest entry for Jason over at Illinois Jason Skills. He's having a celebration, 800 subscribers, right? Anyway, he just kind of threw it together, so I'm not even sure what the prize is. Nobody knows. Anyway, it's your favorite concerts. Now, you want to see 5, 10, no more than 15. I don't know how many I've got. Really what I did, so I've seen a lot of concerts. To the point where some of the details get fuzzy. But I find that the ones that are most memorable, that stand out as being still my favorites, are the early ones. And this would have been in the 80s. I mean, I do get some later. But when I was pulling details, I'm like, you know, the ones that really stand out are the ones that I saw when I was younger. For some reason, that's when I was hungry and just, you know, the music was great. I've seen some bands numerous times over the years, but the earlier days of some of those, you know, hold out. Recently, I've seen a handful. I went and saw Alice Cooper the other day, as I showed on my video. That was a great concert. That's not in my list. So anyway, let's get right into this. I pulled a bunch of albums. Now, what I'm doing is a little different than the way he did it. I'm actually rebuilding some of the awesome concerts that I did back then. So he was just saying, I saw this band, it was great. But I am more or less focused on, I saw this concert, these were the bands, and these were great. Now, I have a childhood friend that I saw most of these concerts with. He still lives in the area. You know, we chit-chat here and there on Facebook, but we haven't really had much communication since I left for the military back in the 80s. Like I say, I run into him every once in a while. We did go see Judas Priest together, because I had some free tickets. That was a handful of years ago. But, you know, we don't communicate a lot. So usually when I'm communicating with him, I'm shooting him a message. And so I had to confirm, hey, didn't we see so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. So some of this I had to go back and recollect on his. And I'll mention that here in a second. So I'm starting with, and they're barely ranked, because it's really hard to do this. But I kind of shuffled them around, and I thought, okay, I'm just putting them in order of the ones that stood out as the highest, put them at the top. The rest of them are just kind of in generic order. So in the early 80s, when Pyromania first came out, got to go see Def Leppard. Now I'm for some reason thinking that I saw them twice, but I'm thinking that's the Quiet Riot story. But anyway, Pyromania was a tour where we got to see Crocus opening. I remember I have pictures actually from my childhood where in one set of pictures, me and my two friends are wearing a Crocus shirt. And then in the next picture, me and my friends are wearing Def Leppard. I'm wearing the British flag shirt that they were selling, the sleeveless shirt, and they're wearing the Crocus shirt. But we all bought Headhunter shirts and everything. And the opening band was Gary Moore, who we kind of dug at the time. I think we had this and Corridors of Power. Probably were the only albums by them that we had. But again, it was absolutely a phenomenal concert. We loved Crocus. We loved Def Leppard from the early albums, and we got to see them both together on this tour. It was absolutely another great tour for the earlier 80 years. In 1985 went to see Rat. So, you know, Invasion of Privacy would have been the tour, and I saw those. I went to see Rat, but they were opening for Bon Jovi. Now, I wasn't a big Bon Jovi fan. I did have this album back in the day. I was a big Rat fan, but, you know, so it's kind of like I went to see Rat, but I also enjoyed Bon Jovi. Now, at this particular Rat concert, if you go back and watch the video for, I forget the song from this album. There's a video that's got a bunch of live footage. And there is a scene in the live footage where somebody had a banner up on the wall that said, "Eat me, I'm cheese." That was the concert I was at. So I was right in the front. The camera never did. There was a camera on the track down there because they were shooting a video. The camera never shot up at the audience standing at the wall. I was right at the wall. So went to this. I was right at the wall, pinned in, crushed to death, sweating like a pig. When they were done, I eased myself back out, because I wasn't as interested in Bon Jovi. Eased myself back out, went to the table, bought a Rat t-shirt, because my t-shirt was soaked. Chains t-shirts and went and sat down from a different angle to watch Bon Jovi. It was a great show, but I was there for Rat. So that was a great show, and I'm just putting that nearer to the bottom. This one really should not be near the bottom, but somebody's just in there. In 1985 also, I saw Dio, not this tour. I saw the Sacred Heart tour, but I just realized I don't have the Sacred Heart on vinyl. So I wanted to stick with vinyl, and they had Dokken open up for him. It was an absolutely amazing show. Loved both bands at the time. So I saw the Dio Dokken tour, and I remember at this point in time there, I just remember, I was never I never did smoking or drink or anything like that, but I just remember at this concert, as I'm standing there in the audience near the front, people are passing funny smelling cigarettes in front of me, and I'm like, oh, I hope I don't get, because I'm in the military at this point, I'm like, I sure hope that I don't get a contact buzz or anything in my blood where they might test me. But Dio and Dokken, absolutely, they had the, the Dio still had the, he had the big pyramid and all of that, so it was still kind of a bit of what Paulie was on this tour. Maybe, yeah, it was a Sacred Heart tour, I'm pretty sure. The Dragon, oh, maybe it was a tail end of this tour. Maybe I'm confused. I have to go back and check the date. But I remember the pyramid and the lasers and all of that stuff. So absolutely, though, stood out as an amazing show for sure. Now, also moving into 1985, this would have been in Louisiana. I lived in Mississippi at the time. Those two shows were both at Mississippi, near in Biloxi, where I was stationed. But then we drove over to Louisiana to see Accept. This is probably one of the best, this is, in my opinion, in the 80s, this was probably one of the best shows I saw lineup-wise, just of amazingness. So we saw Accept, Metal Heart Tour. Helix opened up. Oh, I was in love with these bands. And Keel. So, absolutely, it was an all-star cast. And then the opening band that we had never heard of, some local Louisiana band that opened up for them that we knew nothing about, named Lillian Axe. I don't know who they were. But anyway, we know who they are now. But back then we didn't know. We went to see these three monster bands. And I'm just saying it was like, because to have four bands, and three of them, in my opinion, are top-notch 80s bands that I wanted to see at that time, it was absolutely one of the most memorable shows I went to at that time. And so, anyway, some of this will be coming up again. But anyway, and this is the only time I got to see these two guys. So, those Helix and them. Now, some of these, this is definitely out of order. I never got to see Twisted Sister in their heyday. But when they got back together in the early 2000s, in 2004, they played here in Virginia Beach, down at the beach, and I got to see them. So I got to see the reunion, all the original members on the beach. Interesting. It was on the beach down here. They were on the stage, but it was part of some kind of a semi-festival. Yeah, it was. I forget what it was called. They have these festivals every year where there's fairly big name bands, and I think at that point Sugar Ray was on one of the huge stages, bands like that, and then Twisted Sister was on one of the side stages. So anyway, there's been a lot of bands that have come to those shows. But anyway, so I got to see Twisted Sister, but not in their heyday. Now, in the 90s, I saw Dee Snider with the SMFs in Long Island when I lived in Long Island, because he's in that general area. That was an amazing show, but it was Dee Snider with a bunch of young guys playing Twisted Sister tunes. Absolutely the closest thing I could think of to hearing Twisted Sister in their heyday. But that was in the 90s. The band was broke up. It was Dee Snider. It was amazing. So, moving on. This is one of the funny ones. Saw Van Halen on the Diver Down tour. Absolutely amazing show. I asked my friend, who opened for them? He's like, I have no clue, but they must not have been very good. And I could not find anything on the online tour guides for who. I couldn't even find the show that we saw or who opened for him. But I remember seeing the show. I remember it was great. I remember I wore a Fair Warning shirt. I want to say I did not see the Fair Warning tour, but I'm almost not sure I have a recollection of that. But I remember having a 1981 Fair Warning shirt on at the show. We saw this. No clue. It was in 1982. Had no clue who the opening band was. But it was the first time, I'm pretty sure it was the first time, because they had the wall of amps. It was one of the most mind-blowing shows. We were huge Van Halen fans, and we went back in 1984. Again, huge show. You know, they were riding high, jumping, everything. Huge show. And the opening band was Autograph, who we didn't really know much, but I think we knew the song Turn Up the Radio. And I just remember they did really good, and I've been a real big fan since then. But absolutely, 1984 was an amazing tour. Saw that. So let's see. We got some stragglers in here. Stryper, I absolutely fell in love with them in the 80s, of course, 85. Saw them, I'd have to pull out the book. I have a book of all of my ticket stubs and pictures and photos. I saw them probably 4 or 5 times between 86 and 88, mostly around this tour. Probably did see them when in God We Trust, I don't know. But I saw them in a small club. It was just them. We got to meet them, went on the tour bus. I've told some of these stories before. We then saw them like a week later on a bigger place. I saw them with Hurricane opening for them at one show. Most of the times it seems like I've seen them, it was just them. But they were at some of the bigger arenas. I saw them in a Tulane University in Louisiana, in the auditorium at the college, by themselves, as far as I recall. That was kind of a stripped down show. The stage was kind of stripped down. I got pictures from that. And like I said, I saw them in Alabama. I saw them in up in Louisiana, a little further up in like Baton Rouge. We met them after the show there. I can't recall who would have opened for them then. Anyway, saw them quite a few times in that stretch. In a couple years' time, we were driving we went to Tallahassee and saw them in a small club, went to Alabama, went to Louisiana, went back to another place in Louisiana, saw them again somewhere else in Alabama. Absolutely loved in that heyday. I've seen them a couple times since then in the later years, but the earlier days, absolutely, it was just my friend and I were just all over the place. All right, now, everybody knows, if you've ever seen my channel, everybody knows first concert I ever went to, 1979 Kiss Dynasty Tour, but it was 1980, what is this, 83-ish, Lick It Up Tour. I got in trouble with my parents during the Creatures of the Night tour, and they put me on restriction, and I couldn't see that. Really upset. That was the last tour with makeup at the time, but I did get to go see them on the Lick It Up tour. I was kind of drawing a blank on who. I was confused at some of the bands that we saw back in this time, and this is where my friend helped clear up the fact that, yes, we had saw Accept with them. This is when they were riding high, or getting there in America, you know, with Balls to the Wall. So I was thinking it was somebody else, but then he cleared up. I said, who was it that we saw so-and-so with, which we'll be covering in a minute. But basically, the Lick It Up tour was the same Creatures of the Night tank and everything. And pretty much similar costumes. They just, you know, took them, not similar costumes, similar stage, same stage show, but, you know, and we were right there up front to see that. And it was just an amazing show. I don't think I remember as much from 1979 because I was a kid when I saw them in 79. By the time I got into the 80s, I was more of a veteran of going to concerts at this point. My friend and I were going to all kinds of stuff, including the amazing first time we saw Iron Maiden on the Peace of Mind tour. Blew me away. This is, I think, when I really started getting into really buying tour books, because it's just the stage show and the pictures and everything. Simply amazing. This was the first time, but not the last time, I saw Iron Maiden. We saw them here. I saw them, like, again, I'll show in here in a minute, of the following tour. And I've seen them a handful of times in the past, 10 years, 5 or 6 years. So, yeah, but this was the heyday. This is just absolutely, this is the Nico McBrain comes in. It was a great time for music. And when we saw them, there was this little band that was just starting to make a blip on the screens of music named Quiet Riot. So, absolutely, we had heard about them, we knew about them, so to see them together was an amazing, amazing show, and we loved it. Now, then, you just go forward a couple months, I don't know, it was 6, 8 months later, I have to go back and check the dates. Quiet Riot's album, it just blew up, and they became huge, and they came back less than a year later on a headlining tour. Got to see them again. We were standing right there by the front of the stage, and we got to see them. Saga, who were riding high on MTV with On the Loose. The music didn't really match. You got this kind of a prog band going with Quiet Riot, but it was still a good show. And then the opening band was Headpins. This is where my friend reminded me. I'm like, I know we saw Headpins, and I see the Quiet Riot Saga tour, but who was it Headpins with anyway? this was not listed anywhere online. I couldn't find Headpins listed as being at that concert. So this was great. Never heard the band before, and we got to stand up front. Darby Mills is there. She's a very pretty, attractive woman. We're young kids, and we got to see that great show. So that was a great show there that we saw at that time. Then, again, going back into 85s, back at Mississippi. So we moved out of my earlier 80s childhood into 85, and this is probably one of the better shows that I saw in 85. At the same place in Mississippi where I was stationed, where I saw the Power Slave tour from Iron Maiden. Blew me away more than Peace of Mind. The big mummy thing behind the stage and the pyramid, all this. It was probably one of the biggest and best shows I've ever seen. Now, I've seen Iron Maiden quite a few times since then, and their shows are as big, if not bigger. There's more sceneries, more blow-ups, more huge things. But back in this day, it just was so organic feeling. It was just there weren't many bands that were doing that, and this show really took our breath away. And one of the best things about it was Wasp was opening. It was the one and only time I got to see Wasp in concert. Absolutely fell in love with this album from day one. I was in love with the Animal single way before the album. Then the album came out, fell in love with the album. So to see them with one of my favorite bands, Iron Maiden, it made it a very, very memorable experience. I've told the story before. I went with some friends, and one of the other guy's girlfriends was on his shoulder during Wasp. And so she was on his shoulders and whatever. Blackie Lawless came out. He took a poster, and he got kind of crude with it and rubs it between his legs. And he threw it right at her. Right at my friend, this girl. It hit her. She didn't catch it. It hit her and then fell to the ground. And the friend whose shoulder she was on, he dove for it, throwing her to the ground. We got the poster. My friend gave me the poster. And that girl is my wife now of 37 years. So anyway, yes, I got the girl and the poster. But yes, absolutely memorable night of all times, of course. Then I would have to say one of the absolute favorite concerts I've seen that has been fairly recent. 2017, I finally got to see the Neil Morse Band on Similitude of a Dream tour. Just them. They played like 3 hours. It was just like the whole album. Amazing stuff. Mike Portnoy, Neil Morse. My wife went with me. She sat up in the seats. I was right down in front of the stage, and absolutely just, it was like a dream come true. I've only got to see him that one time, and I really want to see him again. But it was absolutely probably the highlight of all the shows I've ever seen, and it's just amazing. Now, I have seen I've seen Kiss numerous times, like I think 4 or 5 times. 2004, 2008, 2012, 2010, 2012, 2014, 2019. So I've seen them quite a few times. I've never really seen, some of my favorite bands. Like I saw Motley Crue open for Kiss, but not back in the heyday. I have seen Judas Priest with Deep Purple recently. So there's a lot of bands back in the heyday that I never got to see when they were at their peak. I've never seen the Scorpions. Anyway, a lot of bands not seen. But that is all I'm going to say. I don't want to drag this out too long. I could go through my whole history of concerts, but this is probably the top one there. And that's it. Make sure you jump on this contest. Link will be below for the contest, and we'll see you later. Rock on and rock hard.